Let's go. That's a better camera angle. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, crew. I hear you. Thanks to everybody at Locals for show. Hey, you got no sound. Very funny, JB. Very funny. And yes, 2 p.m. is the regular start time now. More frequent streams, typically less in length. All right. Welcome to Between the Numbers. And yes, 2 p.m. is the new time for everything. What are the odds? It's always 2 p.m. on Mondays when we have it with Robert, like we did actually yesterday because we couldn't do it Monday. Inside the Numbers will also be 2 p.m. And then in between the numbers will be 2 p.m. as well. So, we just did the math. More people can see it at 2 p.m. I think also there's a lot of other stuff going on at 2 p.m. shows and other stuff. That's number one. That's a big deal. And the viewership is higher. And then also, it seems like what goes on during the day doesn't get interrupted as much at 2 p.m. So what typically winds up happening is that you get something ready for a show, the show you want to do. And then in the morning, especially in the Trump era, you get bombarded with all of this new events that happen, that go on, and you got to change things up last minute, and it stinks, right? So by the time we know that's going, this time is good because by 2 p.m., we already got hit with, largely that whirlwind, and we have more time to adjust for it, which is great, right? All right. So yesterday, Robert and I, hello. If you like the videos, don't forget to like them and share them far and wide. All right. Subscribe below. Subscribe. The best place, of course, is right here on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. Okay. So yesterday when Robert and I did talk a little bit about USAID, which people will colloquially call USAID, which I think throws off what it actually is. And I was kind of looking into the comments. You know how Robert and I roll on. We know what we want to talk about and we do. So it's kind of hard to break from what we're doing. And I noticed that certainly on the left, but everywhere, there is confusion about what USAID is, right? Confusion about what it is. And then, so it's obvious that people can make a lot of talking points that are just BS about why the elites in DC are flipping out. Now, I want to make something perfectly clear. All right. Everybody knows that the government is filled with waste, fraud, and abuse. Everyone knows that. But what this election was about, and what I think Republicans that are MAGA Republicans need to be more aggressive in stating. And I noticed, by the way, since I've been saying this, Musk, Trump himself, there was a great clip from him yesterday. He gets it. But all should be more aggressive in explaining that this really is not about waste, fraud, and abuse, right? Yeah, that's true. And that is the case. This is about a cartel, all right, as in Jack Snyder, Myths of Empire, his definition of cartels in government. This is about a corrupt cartel that takes your money, they've already saddled your children with a debt they have no hope of paying. They keep stuffing that in their pockets through these corrupt organizations that promise foreign aid, right? And if you go to them, if you go to the website, you'll see they'll say, oh, it's humanitarian assistance. And we're giving it to non-governmental organizations, right? There's a history with USAID. And it's not that. First of all, aid, disgusting aid. Americans are generous, but disgusting amounts of aid are not popular. Okay. When you're in the middle of a news cycle and you see horrible pictures about, poor human condition in another country, and a pollster like me asks voters, do you support giving them aid, humanitarian aid? No American in their right mind is going to say no. I mean, well, of course they do, but no majority. Because Americans are decent people and they're very generous by nature. All right. But at the same time, as this election showed, Americans are quite smart enough to understand that there is an infrastructure in this country that is wasting us away. And unless we reform them or abolish them or just completely dismantle the racket that they have been running for decades, we're going down. And they know that. They know that aid to Ukraine is not just making its way to schoolhouses and food for the poor and blah, 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 blah. Aid programs that are meant to build schools for Palestinian kids in the Gaza Strip end up being fun, the bankrolls for Hamas and weapon caches and terror tunnels and et cetera, et cetera. This is what is important for you to understand when it comes to not just USAID, and that's obviously a huge source of it, which we're going to show you. Politicians get something for this. They get something for allocating this money. The bureaucrats are cogs in the wheel, but they get something for it. The ability to pass legislation, favored legislation, is a congressman or woman or senator's currency in DC, which is why seniority on committees is so important. Why? Because you get to figure out which bill is going to go forward or get tabled, who's going to get paid and who isn't. And in response to that, as we're going to see on Twitter in a little bit, in response to that, these lawmakers are getting kickbacks. All right. Now, they could be in the form of a lot of things. Certain groups making large, generous donations to their campaigns, maybe making sure, USAID sends a couple billion over to Ukraine to develop in their energy sector, right? It's just aid. It's economic aid. Then a certain politician's son gets a job on the board of an energy company, one of the biggest in the country, if not the biggest in the country, known to be totally corrupt, by the way, even though he doesn't speak the language, know anything about the sector, the energy sector in general, or anything about that part of the world for that matter. And then that son's going to take some of the oodles and oodles of money that they gave him and put it in daddy's bank account. Thanks for the loan, Pops. This is how families like the Obamas, like the Clintons, right? The McConnells, let's throw some Republican names in there. They're there. The Grahams, the McCains, the Bidens. This is how these people with no talent, no God-given talent to do anything in this world, but get elected because, in Joe Biden's own words, he was willing to be a political whore. This is how people like that, mediocrity at best, bare ethical bar by their own standards, not yours, walk into DC, broke-ass losers, and walk out with huge places in Martha's Vineyard and the suburbs of Northern Virginia. Or in Joe Biden's case, Wilmington, Delaware. This is how the game is played in the District of Columbia. And Trump needed to do two things to go after it. Obviously, you have to go to the Treasury Department as well. Why? They issue the payments. It's that simple. But there used to be direct funding to a lot of these organizations at USAID from other agencies, such as such as Central Intelligence Agency. So sorry for the spooks out there. For those of you who don't know, anyone who works at the CIA gets super offended when you say the CIA, because there is no the in front of God, is there? So why would you put one in front of CIA? No shit. USAID stands for the United States Agency for International Development. All right. It sends money to organizations in foreign countries, calls it humanitarian aid, when most of the time it's to topple governments, start coups, push propaganda. Ukraine is such a good example of this. And the worst thing about it is that in recent years, these tactics, which they called the dark arts in the intelligence community, these tactics and these very institutions have been used and turned against you. Ukraine, Biden. This isn't really supposed to have. The American public is not supposed to be the mark. They were always the sucker, but they were never the mark. And in recent years, I think that's a big part about what has changed. And another big part about it is, I'm not sure it was ever the case, but Congress has failed to conduct their role of oversight because they're in on the scam. It's essentially a money laundering scheme where they take your money, they give it to groups, often in line with their values, right? That are going to do something, push some agenda where they want it pushed, most often in foreign countries, obviously. In response, they get money back from that. In response, they get jobs for a family back from that. It's grossly corrupt. And no committee sits above it all and says, we're going to police you. Quite the contrary. They want to get on those committees so they can direct the scam. Because then they get more money. They get more power. They get more influence. So I'm going to play some clips about what USAID is, from two people I think did a fantastic job, and one I think did a fantastic job explaining why the elites are flipping their shit over this. I mean, everything I just told you, you should be able to deduce it on your own, but he puts it into its proper context, current context, about what's been going on in today, especially in the era of Trump. What has Trump pulled the veil back and showed? The first Trump impeachment was to protect this racket. When Trump said, I need you to investigate what's going on with the Bidens, they didn't impeach him for trying to investigate his political opponent, like Joe Biden directed other people to do, or at least members on senile Joe Biden's team at the White House directed prosecutors to do, not for the sake of protecting his own political ass, but because of the corruption. And that would have led to a conversation that powerful people like Adam Schiff cannot have, because Adam Schiff has blood and mud all over his hands. He has rubbed elbows with more than a few arms dealers and oligarchs in Ukraine, recipients of money that gets funneled through USAID. And we'll talk a little bit more too. There was a great thread. I'm going to read it. We'll talk a little more about why, because this has to do with public opinion. Most recently, these tools have been turned on you, at least half of you. More, actually. You won this time. More than half of you, technically. These tools were turned against you. Money was sent to groups whose sole purpose is to defeat you politically. That shit is not supposed to happen in this country. There is no way to get to the heart of some of our country's biggest problems without breaking up the cartel that has been running it for years. And a big part of the failure and why we are here today is Congress. And now that's why we're dealing with all of these big questions right now. Does Trump have the authority to do this? right? This only Congress who established USAID, only they can dismantle it, right? Well, that is technically true. Same thing with the Department of Education. We're going to talk about that, no doubt, not today, but in another episode. It's coming up. Trump is that order is drafted. It's already done. Last time a Republican president tried to do it, it was Ronald Reagan. He was stabbed in the back by cartel congressmen like John McCain and others in his own party who tell voters one thing when they're trying to get votes and get elected, but go to DC and they live and they serve the cartel. So Trump is doing this another way. And, well, this is the second kind of part of the show, is this entire line that Elon Musk has not been elected. He doesn't have the authority to do this. And of course, they phrase it as a billionaire oligarch, the richest man in the world, is stealing your money. This money doesn't go to you. Every American listening to this show, everyone listening to the show, clip this part and send it to every friend you have so they can understand. This money doesn't benefit you. They throw you a bone here and there, but you are not the beneficiaries. So when Chris Murphy, who I'll play, and others say that they're taking money away from regular people, it's bullshit. They're taking money away from people that support Chris Murphy every time he needs to win an election and who he makes sure gets paid for doing so. And then he takes his piece, he takes his kickback, and the whole damn thing starts again. What they are doing that involves you is robbing you blind and saddling your children and your grandchildren with a debt they will never be able to pay. You are not the beneficiaries on the cartel's insurance policy. They wrote themselves down on this policy, folks. And this is designed for them, not for you. You get a dog bone here and there. That's what you get to shut you up. So we'll talk about this entire line of argument that, because it really, as the banner says, there's two parts of it. I'm not sure they understand what voter sovereignty is, but even if they did, and maybe some of them do have some, smidgen of an idea, they don't respect it at all. They don't care if there are other unelected people running the show, like there was with Joe Biden. Well, the president drooled on himself and crapped himself in the corner. They only care that those people advance the interests of the cartel. And when they don't, they get on their high horse and they start talking about this. Trump is the sovereign. He is an extension of you in the executive branch. In fact, he's the only extension. The rest of the executive branch is filled with unelected bureaucrats and scumbags who don't give a damn about who you voted for. So what does a president do when he has to get out of a system, when he has to reform and he has to make changes on behalf of the sovereign who elected him? What is he to do about a system that is designed to make sure that you actually don't get your way? The system is designed for self-perpetuation, self-preservation, to keep the scam alive. Doesn't matter who comes in office, you will come and go. But the permanent scam or the permanent government, their role is to protect the con, the scam, which benefits them. All right. Here's just like a quick thing on Rogan. Did a great job explaining what not only what it is, but where it came from. Because you have to understand, once upon a time, before they decided we can't keep this dark money thing up forever, there are a lot of people who are anti-national security state in this Congress, because back then there was. We can't keep this up forever. We can't keep, because if you think it's bad at USAID, wait till we get to the Defense Department. Okay? Because a lot of these people, the State Department needed to separate. You know what? Who is the best front for the CIA? For you guys out there, maybe a lot of you don't know, but maybe you do, and you've been part of the political world before. Anytime you go overseas and, you're mixing it up, You find somebody who's a foreign service officer. Oh, I got a job at the State Department. Okay. It's bullshit. Or at least it's the most common front for the CIA is the State Department. And that's where this is going. Okay. Keep that in mind. Let's go with this because it's going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Not too long.
USAID is, a very notorious. It's sort of a switch player. There's no aid in USAID, by the way. That's your brain is being tricked when you see the phrase USAID. It's not an aid organization. The aid in USAID stands for U.S. Agency for International Development. It is developing internationally around the world all of the institutions that the State Department needs to use. So when they are capacity building activist groups in a foreign country, that's because the State Department wants those activists there. Now, USAID, for the first time in its history, it was created in the early 1960s by JFK, 1961. It was created because you had...
I just want to say he's absolutely right. It was created in September of 1961. And you will see a lot of false information out there, including in Wikipedia. They don't codify it immediately, folks. That's not. And same thing with the Department of Education. Actually, that took a very long time to get codified by Congress. Okay. But yeah, he's 100% correct.
All of this intelligence, statecraft, and military support and logistical aid that was tripping over itself, basically. The military would be funding, would be running aid to certain groups in the region. The State Department would be running aid to certain groups in the region. The intelligence community would, and there was no sort of central coordinator of those capacity building operations. So USAID, by the way, is a $50 billion budget. The entirety of the intelligence community is only $72 billion. So it is as more than the CIA and more than the State Department.
Wow.
And aid is basically USAID is effectively a switch player to assist the Pentagon with on the national security front, to assist the State Department on the national interest front, or to assist the intelligence community on a sort of clandestine operations front. So,
all right. So he absolutely nailed it. All right. Sorry, he absolutely nailed it. Did you hear what he said about the money? The entire budget of the CIA. So if you want to become much bigger than your britches, okay, and you want these groups, your marks, right, your assets, right, to do these things for you around the world, and you don't want Congress, or forget about, at some point it became not about hiding it from Congress or keeping the conversation away from Congress. It became about keeping it away from you. Not only how much, but what are they doing with this money? Because sadly, at some point, Congress didn't say, "Hey, I want to keep tabs on what you're doing." They said, "Hey, where's my slice of the pie? How do I make this benefit me?" And that's a major problem. Because of course, Congress is supposed to be your representatives. They're not supposed to represent the oligarchs in Ukraine. They're not supposed to represent the new leftists that are pushing for revolution in Syria, or the new Islamist group that's pushing for revolution in Syria. They're not supposed to represent Gaddafi's opponents. They're supposed to represent you. And you have Republicans out there, you'll see very soon, who are literally voting to fund efforts to screw themselves and to screw their own base of voters. It's truly remarkable, but they're corrupt. These are corrupt people. It's the definition of corruption. This is public corruption. There are a handful of institutions you're going to see the Trump administration go after in the federal government. USAID is certainly one of them. Entire sections of the Fed and the Treasury Department, both two by themselves, obviously. And then we have corruption in law enforcement. The Congressional Budget Office is another one. These are institutions that were established to perpetuate the scam, to perpetuate public corruption. And God forbid anybody comes in with a plan to reform it. Don't worry, the CBO is going to come out and score how that's going to hurt the country economically. They're never right. They are never right. But they're going to do it because that's their job, to protect the post-World War II, specifically post-World War II order in D.C. And certainly the New Deal Great Society order, where they take your generosity and turn it on you, where they literally take advantage of the goodness of the American public and they enrich themselves with it, and they scam you out of your money. It's a more sophisticated, I mean, it kind of is a Ponzi scheme at the end of the day. I don't know if you want to call it that, but I was definitely going to, I guess it is. It is a pyramid, because at the end of the day, I mean, you're going to be the one left holding the bag. They're all going to be rich and they're going to cash out. You're going to be left holding the bag. And I'm not going to get into some of the religion or the religious institution aspects of this. Maybe I need to just save that for another day. But the fact of the matter is, there are certain churches in this country who supposedly take pride in not taking sides. But man, they're pissed off about USAID. They're immigration scams, right? They're humanitarian scams, refugee resettlement scams, which fill the coffers of their church while destroying other countries. Boy, they got a big mouth now. They don't have a damn thing to say when a 12-year-old girl who the cartel smuggled over and then changed the amount that it would cost to smuggle that girl over, the family couldn't pay it. They found her body floating in the Everglades. They have nothing to say over her. But boy, they're pissed now. All right. Here's Schellenberger. This was good. This was so good that instead of just repeating and regurgitating what he said, might as well hat tip him and just put it up himself. This, in case you guys don't know, he is part of, I think it's fair to say, a group of left-wing, or formerly left-wing journalists in emerging and then later independent media, because they were perfectly acceptable among the ruling class and the media ruling class at the New York Times, the Guardian, the Wall Street Journal, all of these places. They were perfectly welcome in those circles until they began to question things like foreign assistance schemes, never-ending war, lies about WMDs, intelligence surveillance state, whether or not somebody like Edward Snowden is a whistleblower or a traitor, right? Now they're not welcome there anymore. And they're great. They are. And I'm not saying because I always agree with the angle they're coming at things with, because a lot of it I don't. But they're doing what journalists are supposed to do, question the halls of power. And if you do that, you're just not welcome in the media circles anymore. So instead of, regurgitating anything he says, it's his credit. He deserves it. Let's just play his game.
Quickly and airing USAID's dirty laundry publicly, Musk and Trump have sent a strong signal against censorship and other anti-democratic actions used by USAID.
Whoa, censorship. What does he mean? Let's listen more.
USAID has the unique distinction of being both a deep state agency involved in covert actions aimed at destabilizing foreign governments and one of the main U.S. government agencies that comprise the foreign policy establishment. The pursuit of globalism and foreign intervention has proved not only to be costly and distracting, but has also fueled abuses of power against American citizens. Since his first election in 2016, it has become even more evident that blowback from U.S. foreign policy would disrupt harmony at home. To combat alleged misinformation, the censorship industrial complex used counterterrorism and intelligence tactics developed abroad, including psychological operations, and repurposed them to shape domestic opinion and thought. This repurposing of national security tools was a key feature of the weaponization of government against Trump, his supporters, and other dissidents.
Yep.
As part of U.S. government efforts to overthrow governments abroad or simply influence what they do, USAID has in recent years been funding censorship advocacy worldwide through its Countering Disinformation program, which is part of its Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening. This work has included funding for so-called fact-checking organizations, including in Brazil, which governments use as a predicate for demanding censorship by social media companies.
Sound familiar? Okay. Because I'm going to get to a thread here in a second. It's like, okay, Rich, this is Brazil. Like, what do we care about this? Well, you should, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. But it should sound rather familiar. 57 intelligence officials say that, or 51 intelligence officials say that the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation. The New York Post printed Russian propaganda. Well, I guess Twitter's going to have to go in there now and freeze their account, which is what they did before an election, even though what they were printing was absolutely 100% the truth. And it was not Russian disinformation. It was the truth. It was something that they didn't want you to hear about. And this is what they do in foreign countries. I think a lot of Americans don't expect this to happen in their own. You get what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times Americans turn a blind eye to, and it's, look, even the word is evil, to the evils of their government, the actions their government takes, even though generally Americans consider America to be a good country morally and by character. They turn a blind eye to this shit, folks. They do. They turn a blind eye to it, and they think, it doesn't matter. It's somebody, we're talking about Brazil. We're talking about Iran. That's what they do in Iraq. It's not that big of a deal. But it is a big deal. Because, number one, question is whether or not we should be doing it in the first place is a separate question. But have we ever considered how big of a deal it will become when they turn around and begin to use those tactics on us? So just the fact that we know what we know now alone should count us all among the skeptics with organizations like this. Most Americans don't feel like, what the hell? I always forget it my damn self, but most Americans feel as if we should not be using taxpayer funds, for instance, to fund NPR. Okay, well, if that's the case, then why on earth would we consider doing it like this in other countries? Or spending, and then let alone maybe at the end of the day, it's not just other countries that they're doing it with. Maybe they take it and they do it right here. Or maybe they use the template that they're using against these other countries against you. And right, it's been reined in thanks to people like Michael Schellenberger and others. That's how he knows how to spot it, because he's seen it. It's been reined for now. What happens when Donald Trump's not president anymore? So if Trump just goes along to get along, does the easy thing, business as usual, as you're going to see from Robert Reich in a second, if he just goes along with business as usual, and what the hell happens when he's not president anymore? Do we go back? Do we revert to this again? So it's like there is reform, and then there's real reform. There's paying lip service to certain reforms, and then there's doing the hard work that when you really are challenging the status quo, you're going to get pushback. Visceral, hateful, nonsensical, even doesn't matter. They're going to start throwing all sorts of shit against the wall because something has got to stick. It's go time, all hands on deck. Because he's going to the heart of it now. This isn't a token gesture. This could really hurt us. Because once they lose the ability to do this, folks, they're worthless to them. And by they, I mean the politicians and the media. Their alliance particularly with the Democratic Party, but there's most certainly Republicans involved in this scam. Their alliance, their incestuous relationship, whatever you want to call it, means nothing if it cannot deliver for these people. Then they become useless, and they'll find somebody else to do it. They'll find somebody else who's more effective, and they'll give them the money instead, even if they're senile idiots and their son is a crackhead who buys 15-year-old Russian prostitutes. And I don't, look, folks, you know how I feel about it. I'm not taking a crack at the guy for drug use. Who the hell am I to throw who the hell am I to throw stones at a glass house, right? But they'll use the person that's effective. And you cannot tell me the Bidens were not effective at this.
The links between USAID regime change work abroad and anti-Trump work in the United States may go deeper than people realize.
Ta-da!
Before working at the Department of Homeland Security, Nina Jankowicz worked on democracy assistance programs for NDI, the USAID-funded program in Eastern Europe. And as we discovered through the Twitter files, Jankowicz was involved in an effort by a CIA venture capital fund-backed effort to seize control of Twitter's content moderation. And why are progressive Democrats outraged? Well, in part because USAID funded many of them, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Trump and Musk can likely expect significant congressional blowback this week due to their abrupt halting of USAID funding, the firing of its leaders, and the shutting down of its website and X accounts.
I just want to stop and point out that this was posted after Barnes and I were discussing the AOC. Now, I didn't know about it. Barnes did. He brought it up yesterday. For people who don't know what we're talking about, go back and watch What Are the Odds. But she is textbook useful idiot for people like this. Textbook. And I said to Robert, the only way someone like an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gets away with her own identity being a scam is if she's protected by the cartel. You're not, even if you were to find, as we did, as others like Big League did and Breitbart did, right-wing organization, it doesn't matter. If they're right wing, left wing, nothing wing, chicken wing, it don't matter. Everything about the girl's biography was a scam. It was a fake. Those businesses she claimed to have started weren't real. She never had jobs she claimed to have. She didn't grow up where she said she grew up. She's not Jenny on the block. Jenny from the block, whatever. And the only way you get away with not only coming in and defeating somebody who is a Pelosi lieutenant, but doing it under the guise of an identity that is a total fabrication, and then getting reelected time and time again, becoming a leader among your party, even though you are a moron, is if you are created and supported by these people and you do their bidding and you get rewarded for it. You're useful to them. They keep you around. They make phone calls. They make sure that story is never going to get printed, let alone at the New York Times and the Washington Post. That story's not landing on Fox.com. That story's sure as hell not even getting on Fox and Friends or the pages of the Wall Street Journal. That shit is going to be shut down. No takers, no bitesies. That's the only way. So even though Robert brought that up, I actually only freely guessed that because the most absurd example was AOC. And you'll find, by the way, that a lot of these so-called champions of the people are the biggest whores of the cartel.
Trump may have anticipated the rising concern when he reassured a reporter last night that he had not made a decision about the future of the organization and was simply removing the radical lunatics who ran it. It is incredible that Trump, who Democrats and the media derided as a fascist for years, has done significantly more than ostensibly left-wing figures like Ocasio-Cortez to challenge the blob. Trump's focus on sovereignty, realism, and strength is a major departure from decades of foreign meddling.
Sovereignty and strength. Realism, sovereignty, and strength. look, I couldn't say it any better myself, which is why I just grabbed the clip. He nailed it. Schellenberger nailed it. And all of these people that are, in social media influencers they call nuts have been pointing stuff like this out for years. Whether it's Glenn Greenwald, Schellenberger, or Mike Cernovich, who for the last 5 days has been like, where was the Freedom Caucus, right? Tell me again how conservative you are when you haven't done a damn thing about the blob. Let's call it the blob. That's a cartel. What he's talking about is the cartel. It's the national security cartel. And whether you want to call it the deep state, the administrative state insinuates more. It really does. But the blob is the security element of the administrative state. That is the cartel, because they're a parochial group that share these parochial interests, as Schneider so beautifully wrote in Myths of Empire. And they come together, and man, this is what makes, the guy's entire theory is he's a realist, but he does recognize the internal or domestic influence on foreign policy more than just traditional realism does, the decision making that goes on in foreign policy. And he seeks to do it through this thesis on the cartel and the impact of cartel interest on foreign policy specifically. And this is exactly what he's talking about. How do you change course? How does a nation, before it's too late? And by the way, these cartels tell myths of empire in order to preserve themselves and do what they want to do. They're myths because they're bullshit and it's not true, like the domino theory. Oh, we have to fight them over here, so over there, so we don't fight them over here. They use terms like boogeyman and bad, and they inject all this fake morality into it. Kim Jong-un is a bad guy. North Korea is a bad nation. I'm not saying they are or they're not. The point is, we're bad too. All nations kind of end up bad. They act in their own influence, and they act in their own interests, and to somebody else, it's bad. But the danger is that these cartels, these groups of interest, the blob is ours. They will do anything and everything to survive, to keep their scam going. And sadly, for most nations, they will stop and prevent reform. So when it's time to change trajectory, when we know something isn't working, we're overexpanding. Overexpansion is something that he focuses on a great deal. Many, many others do. It's his way of explaining why nations who are overexpansionists, and they go down. They go down because of it, folks. They overexpand. They spend too much. They get far, far, far bigger or too big for their own britches. They cannot hold up their own empire, and they collapse. And overexpansion is a cause of collapse, a main cause. And of course, I'm talking about for great powers, which we are, a superpower specifically, an empire. They don't want course correction, and they will end up causing the collapse. The blob, the politicians so angry about USAID, they are the cartel. They are trying to prevent change that you voted for. And if they are not defeated, it will end up in our collapse. It's not a question of if, it is a question of when. It cannot continue forever. And by the way, on the way down, a lot of people get hurt. Physically, economically. And it's not going to be them. It's going to be you. They're already making you pay for everything else. You think they're not going to make you pay the price? They'll survive. Like the Russian oligarchs who survived the Soviet Union. Made it through Putin. They'll survive. Or they'll try. Oh, they definitely will if we let it go to the point of collapse. They're always there to pick through the rubble, steal the rings off your fingers, the wallets out of your pockets, and the proverbial virginity from your daughters.
Regime change and influence operations. This move is a key step in shifting U.S. focus away from globalist projects and back to domestic prosperity, which has been a feature of Trump's platform for years. Said Trump in 2016, "We will no longer surrender this country or its people to the false song of globalism. The nation state remains the true foundation for happiness and harmony."
That what? Whoops, my bad. The nation, we will not surrender to the false promise of globalism. The nation state remains the true source of happiness and harmony. Spoken like a true realist. And why should you care? And why should you agree? Because that is what dominates the world. That is what governs the world. The rest of it is bullshit that people speak out of both sides of their mouth so they can get what they want from you. There is, and by the way, again, I really can't tell you this enough, guys. Sign up to Locals right down there, peoplespundit.locals.com, 3 p.m. Eastern time, if you are a local supporter, 3 p.m. Or, by the way, a member of YouTube, you get it too. 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do the book club, and you would know what I'm talking about with Jack Snyder and many other things that I just rattled off about. We are now doing nations and identities. Nations and identities. And you can hear it out of their own mouths. This is the structure they want because they want to be the ones taking that prosperity from you. And it doesn't work. It never works. Regimes lose their credibility, which is something, ironically, Trump's opponents are trying to call into question now. It's incredible. Projection, projection, projection. I'm going to play a Democrat. We're going to go over a little bit. I'm going to play a Democrat a little bit. We're going to go over. I'm going to play a Democrat. Then I'm going to read something from another Democrat. We're going to get an idea of kind of like what their narrative has been. All right. And the real question here is, how much of a myth-believing country is the United States? Because in truth, we are. Why? Because we want to see the world in terms of morality. And it makes us vulnerable to the asinine propaganda that we're hearing everywhere right now. It always has. Lusitania. The poor Lusitania. Those bad Germans sunk it for no reason. The Gulf of Tonkin. Poor, poor people. The babies in the incubators. Oh, God. What a horrific sight. Let's kill those sons of bitches. WMDs. Saddam's trying to buy yellow cake so he can give it to Al Qaeda. Let's string that motherfucker up, man. It's all bullshit. Traditionally, America has been a myth-believing country. The domino theory is a perfect example. We got to stop those communists in Southeast Asia. There's already one of them in our hemisphere. If we allow Cuba in our hemisphere, the whole world's going to be communist. The real danger was the communists in the State Department. The real danger was, in fact, the communists in Hollywood. Reagan was right. Who knew? Not the communism in French Indochina. Not the communists that the French couldn't deal with, so they dumped them on us in their over-expansion folly themselves, because that's how Vietnam ended. That's how Vietnam began, actually. But that's how that situation came to be what it was. French over-expansionists. Then realizing they couldn't do it anymore, dumped the problem on us. As the Brits, as they were going down, collapsing from overexpansion. as they did to us with the Middle East. There you go. We can't mess with it anymore. By the way, we're still super moral, so we recognize Palestine, not those Jews. Let's take a real quick break. And then when we come back, we'll get more into those myths and we'll hear more from the people who oppose any reform of the blob whatsoever. Because, of course, they want to enrich themselves and continue to enrich themselves as they have been for decades. Stay right there. You're watching Between the Numbers. Look, folks, if you've ever wanted to protect your own wealth, or maybe you're just thinking about diversifying and you're thinking about investing in gold or silver, the folks over at Freedom Gold are definitely the guys and the girls you need to call. Bottom line, what I love about these guys is that there is no hard sell. They really do care about making you confident enough that when you decide to make a decision, you feel like you are confident 100% in that decision. Also, again, no boiler room tactics, no hard sell, but also they have a number of great deals out there. And you should definitely go to freedomgoldusa.com/rich. The link is in the description and go see what you may qualify for. The buy-in fee has been reduced for viewers of our shows dramatically, like ridiculous, unheard of. All right. Most of the time it's like 50 grand or 20 grand, 10 grand, even Freedom Gold. It's usually 5, but not for you. It's $500, which is unheard of for one of these houses. All right. And no matter which deal you take advantage of, you're still going to be thrown to the prize pool and somebody's going to win free silver. All right. And typically it's 2 a month. All right. So if you did get that notification, congratulations to you. And as I understand it, multiple people who actually didn't even open the account at first won those raffles, which is extremely generous of them to do. Also, by the way, they will give you a $500 credit if you open a new gold or silver IRA. I mean, it's incredible. No matter what deal you take advantage of, you're still going to get free shipping and insurance on every order. Give them a call, 888-279-3592, 888-279-3592. The phone number is also in the description, as is the website, which I will read again, freedomgoldusa.com/rich. That is freedomgoldusa.com/rich. We'll come back to another one in a second. Let me read. This must be the dumbest labor secretary ever to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate to be the Secretary of Labor. All right. This guy is stupid. He is stupid when it comes to the economy. He is stupid when it comes to political instincts. He's stupid when it comes to socializing, as I understand it. He is an idiot of the highest order. But because he worked for a Clinton, people still care, on the left anyway, about what he thinks, which is just remarkable to me because he is giving them some of the worst advice I could possibly, if I was a Democratic advisor, I could possibly give them. And I will show you in a second, because this is part of their message, right? And he's not alone. This isn't just some, former Democrat who held an office. There are congressmen. There are congressmen calling on their fellow senators, and there are senators, Democratic senators themselves, who are also making this suggestion in response to Trump basically deputizing people like Elon Musk to go in and take on the blob, okay? Whether it's Treasury, because of course, if you're going to deal with any of this, you have got to get the Treasury Department under control. And I used to all these stories. I got to bring this up again because it's just so funny. He's a model civil servant, and he's been working here since 1989, and he can't stand what he's seeing, so he's packing up his desk and leaving. Bull. He's packing up his desk and leaving because Elon found a whole bunch of fraudulent transactions, or Elon's team anyway. He wasn't packing up in protest. He was getting a head start before you found his criminality. And the worst part about all of this is how the hell are you going to prosecute these people? Since, as Barnes and I have been telling everybody for years, and now they just found out relatively recently with the J6 people, with the John Durham prosecutions, that district is broken beyond repair. You cannot have credible, fair. There's no justice. There is no justice in that jurisdiction. There is only fanatical ideology, and that rules the day. You cannot have a fair process. Can't do it. It's not possible. We need an entirely new system to either charge, to either have defended, whatever it may be. The prosecutors, the defendants, they need an entirely new system outside of the District of Columbia because the J6 defendants deserve better. John Durham's prosecutors deserve better. They never had a chance. The judges are crooks. They're fanatics. They're just as fanatical as the Democrats who run for office. The people are overwhelmingly left-wing lunatics. You can see it in the vote. This isn't an opinion. It's an empirical fact. It's demonstrably true. We need an entirely new system. Because what do you do with these people when you do find the goods on them? No jury in D.C. is going to prosecute some model civil servant who's basically making transfers to his political friends. It's never going to happen. I'm telling you right now. Which is why it has to be done like this. There's no other way to do it. All right. Here is former Department of Labor Secretary Robert Reich. We're in the midst of a constitutional crisis. Chicken Little. The sky is falling. The world's richest man is effectively orchestrating a coup. Democrats are so good at accusing people of things because all they have to do is talk about what they're doing and project it onto their political opponents. And they do it so well. And to them, it's so believable because it's how they behave. I mean, everything, Russia collusion, tax fraud at the family charity, everything is something that they actually are accusing their political opponent of doing. And it rolls right off the tongue because it's how they live their life. At the very least, here we go. Senate Dems should not be confirming any of Trump's nominees for any agency while his power grab continues. Nothing should be business as usual. You got to love King Robbo down there. Dude, you're 3'9", shut up. I'm not a tall guy, as many of you have known if you've met me, and you know. Speaking of meeting, I got to tell you something. Laura keeps banging me. But if I make you look like a dwarf, you're short. Okay? That's how we knew how to call BS on DeSantis's boots. Because he was in his boots and we were still eye to eye. I'm like, bullshit, you're 5'8". No, you're not. Anyway, what the former labor secretary, what this left wing, and he always was a friggin' commie, what this left wing commie is essentially suggesting the Democratic Party do, what their argument to the American public will be, is listen up, American voter. Your duly elected president, your sovereign, shall not be allowed to get control over this government, which is the executive branch, and he's supposed to be the boss of it, so therefore you're supposed to be in control of it. You can't get control over the executive branch until we are once again allowed to freely launder your money. That's what they're arguing. Think about it. We're going to hold up your ability to wrest control away from a corrupt bureaucracy by a legitimate sovereign, okay? The extension of you. We're going to prevent you from getting control over your own government until you once again shut the hell up and allow us to launder your money, which we're going to saddle your children with debt over. And until we get our way and our scam goes back and we can go back to stealing your money, you don't get shit. This government won't work. Think about the media, the Democrats, and even some spineless Republicans. Think about the reaction when Ted Cruz and Rand Paul want to shut down the government over in Ted Cruz's, in his case, he wanted nothing more than Republicans to uphold their promise to voters. He wanted to repeal elements of Obamacare, as they promised to do for 7 years. All he was saying was, I'm going to shut it down until you do what we said we were going to do. And by the way, Congress has the power of the purse. It's a legitimate tool. In the case of Rand Paul, until you stop illegally spying on people, I'm going to filibuster. I'm going to make sure nothing gets done. I'm going to filibuster until you tell the NSA they cannot watch their girlfriend getting dressed and whack off in the corner of a broom closet somewhere. But here, they want to be allowed to, it's criminal, and it is the height of public corruption, but they, in a way, as Barnes said yesterday, in a way legalized it. They figured out how to make a money laundering racket work legally, at least insulated from the law, if not above it. And any effort to stop it, we are prepared to bring the government to a halt. No president, unless there was some gross example, folks, and you know this by how few have actually been rejected. We played Harry Enton yesterday. The average is only about 3 out of all the, not just cabinet, all appointments. The average is 3 a president might lose. And this is since, I believe he said, 1992. 3. That's it. The president appoints a lot more than just the cabinet picks that make news all the time. Robert's not just saying the cabinet picks here. No, Mr. Wright's just saying everybody. Every nominee, every appointee, anyone who needs confirmation, hold it up. He doesn't get control of the government until we get our scam back. That's what they're prepared to do. Here's Jamie Raskin. Multiple horrible known lies to start wars that have led to the deaths of innocent people, tens of thousands of Americans. If you want to add the lies that got started in some of the great wars, that gets us into the hundreds of thousands dead just on our side alone. Millions if we take both sides or all sides into consideration. They assassinated folks. They murdered a president. They murdered a duly elected president. There have been invasions at the southern border in Joe Biden's administration alone, enough to dwarf the entire time that Ellis Island was open. Those who come in legally have raped, murdered, and committed other horrible offenses, illicit and legal and illegal. Drugs have been allowed to pour out of the halls of Pfizer and Purdue Pharma, Merck, and all of these other companies that have poisoned entire communities, erased manhood from entire families, ended. They sent our jobs over to China and our children to illegal wars. Fentanyl has come pouring across the borders, has killed people on accident because it's so damn strong. We've had a financial crisis because of speculation. And big government, by the way, they're friends, holding guns to the heads of banks and saying, you better figure it out, but you got to make these loans. Nothing has gotten a rise out of these politicians. Nothing. It has been, for the last 4 decades, impossible for any crisis, as much pain as it has cost you, the American voter. Not one of them has been enough to get any of these lazy, crooked sons of bitches off their asses for 2 seconds. But you take away their money laundering scheme, and they'll grab a picket themselves and head to the streets. And we've seen that ever since Donald Trump started targeting their cartel operations.
Elon Musk, you didn't create USAID. The United States Congress did for the American people.
Okay, that's part of the scam. This is a talking point. All right, Chris Murphy did the same thing. You may have seen me respond to Chris Murphy on X, on Twitter. this idea that USAID is for the benefit of you, and he's taking money away from the American public, and USAID was created for the American public. That is a crock of shit. You don't get anything from USAID. This goes to the blob, and those people like Raskin who make sure the blob gets it. This was not created for you. This was created for the security and the censorship state. The blob. My God, what a con. This is everything about it is a con. Everything. Its mission statement, everything about their argument is a con. There's an old saying, the more legitimate you get, the more crooked it is. There's an old adage about that. Michael Corleone, the higher I get, the more illegitimate it is. Right. It's so true. You're looking at a collective tantrum from the world's biggest criminals right now. That's what you're watching. The worst criminals among us. They have the audacity to point fingers at anybody else.
And just like Elon Musk did not create USAID, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him.
Look who's behind him, by the way.
Elon Musk, you may have illegally seized power over the financial payment systems of the United States Department of Treasury, but you don't control the money of the American people. The United States Congress does that. Under Article 1 of the Constitution. And just like the president who is elected to something cannot impound the money of the people.
The president who's elected to something. Just like the president who's elected to something. There it is. Let's take a look at that graphic real quick. Do politicians respect voter sovereignty? Well, we just got our answer. The presidency is supposed to be nothing more than a shell. The presidency is supposed to be nothing more than a figurehead. The staff at the White House tells them what to sign. The staff at the White House tells them what to say. And the staff at the White House tells them what they can and cannot attempt to reform, change, alter in any way, shape, or form. They're just elected to something. They're just somebodies elected to something. And they'll be gone in 4 or 8 years. And they'll come and go, but the blob will remain. And to the blob bitches like Jamie Raskin, that town belongs to them. Your money belongs to them. He's going nuts over the actions in the executive branch. He himself is in the legislative branch. And he's telling the people's only elected entity, the presidency, what they can and cannot do. You just elected to something, Mr. Trump. They don't understand it. They don't respect it at all. That's why the first time you elected this guy, they fabricated an entire hoax that Donald Trump was a traitor who colluded with Vladimir Putin to steal the election, because how else could he be legitimate, right? They didn't care about your decision. They didn't respect it, and they weren't going to listen to it. And they created this dangerous lie that got one of their own shot by a nutcase. And by the way, 4 others who tried to protect him. He now walks with a gimp. He barely survived. They don't give a shit. They don't care. They had to do something about you. Pesky, pesky you. You keep interfering with the scam. How dare you? Don't you know You're the sucker in this relationship? When are you going to learn? That's not your money. It's Jamie's money. That's Jamie's money, and that's everyone who donates to Jamie. That's their money. It's some money that belongs to the bureaucrats who probably snapped pictures of him in the wrong hotel with the wrong woman. Now they got him by the balls. That's their money. Who the hell are you? To something. Believe this shit?
We don't have a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk, and that's going to become real clear.
Well, we don't need a fourth branch of government. And that's the next topic before we close up here. We're going to get a response from the White House in a second here. Actually, I got it. I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send you what their response to this argument. At Elon Musk, who they're going to subpoena, by the way. Ro, I noticed you followed me on X, Ro. So obviously, you're looking to see what I had to say. Why weren't you at the hearing? By the way, you cannot vote for motions when you're not on a committee, bro. Okay? You don't get to cast votes on motions if the committee that's bringing that motion you are not a part of. How long have you been in this body? You don't know how the freaking vote works. Secondly, I thought it was a threat to democracy. I thought Elon Musk was stealing our democracy. You couldn't wipe your ass fast enough to make it down there to cast a vote if it was so damn important? I mean, these people are laughable. Hold the vote again. I was taking a dump. What? You are alleging that a billionaire oligarch has been deputized by the president. Forget about that, though. Forget about that. We don't know. Another branch. We're talking about another branch here. Coming and stealing the American public's money. And you had something better to do? Now you want to redo? But mark my words, folks, they will redo it. That failed by one vote. They will subpoena Elon Musk because this is how opposition, when Democrats are in the minority, this is how opposition behaves. When Republicans are in the minority, they suck on their thumb like little babies, get down under the desk, and curl up in the fetal position. And then they have to complain when Democrats won't do the same thing. What a load of crap. I just want to read this real quick by Jason over at Qantas. He did a real quick thread, then we'll get the response from the White House. Keep that in mind. Keep Jamie's argument in mind. All the Democrats, their argument is this. Donald Trump has deputized oligarchs. They are stealing control of the government, and they're unelected, and blah, 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 blah. And USAID was established for you. Don't you know that? It was for you. That's their argument. All right. Here's a great thread. Jason, I might have said Jamie because probably I had the Jamie on my mind here, but this is a great thread on USAID. Is a leftist slush fund? I would argue it's not fair to call it a leftist slush fund. I do think it's more appropriate, as Schellenberger called it, a globalist slush fund. The cartel, the globalist cartel slush fund. I think that's more appropriate because there are Republicans that are part of this cartel. There are. So, and I think it doesn't really serve anybody, especially you guys, the voters out there, for me to tell you anything else. This is not a party thing. This isn't right versus left. It's not Republican versus Democrat. It is us versus them. It is the ruling class and a government that thinks it is like a divine sovereign, a collective divine sovereign, versus the people who they think are more like subjects and not citizens. Why? What's the difference? Because, of course, we don't have divine sovereignty in this country. You are the sovereign in this country. And your elected executive is the sovereign extension of you, and he or she is the only one in that branch chosen by you to direct what are supposed to be your subordinates. That's what this is about. An executive branch that thinks they're not subordinate to you, they're superior to you. A legislative and judicial branch, both of which have bowed to the blob, the executive blob. They've been bowing for decades. Right around the time they decided to execute your last sovereign who tried to stop them. That would be JFK. Congress has been completely derelict in their duty. They have bowed to the executive. And this is about whether or not you are, as the voter, allowed to take back power from rogue bureaucrats and their little lackey bitches in Congress. And this is why, by the way, primaries are so important. Ultimately, a major problem in this country is that voters need to understand the presidency is not the only significant office to vote for. I got to bring this a great point because they got a long way to go in doing that. Great point. Spoke yesterday with some people out in California, and I spoke to David too, and David reiterated something they had said when they were trying to cure ballots for John Duarte in California 13. They had to go and visit tons and tons and tons and tons of people who left down ballot blank. They voted for Donald Trump. They even voted for some local stuff, state ballot questions, and they left Congress blank. And when they went to go cure the ballot and say, hey, didn't you mean to vote for John Duarte? They said, no, I meant to leave it open. And no, it's not okay for you to collect that. I won't be altering my ballot. Long way to go. All right. The U.S. Agency for International Development claims to promote democracy and development, but a closer look reveals millions in taxpayer dollars flowing to media outlets. How corrupt is this, dude? These are the people now who are writing headlines, not just here, but abroad. NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations, and they are a major, I wouldn't say they, by nature of what they are. I don't like their role, period. I don't, never did. It sounded great, sounded all very honorable, and and it turned out to just be a load. It's a load of crap. Almost all of them are. I would really just, if I had my way, I would just get rid of this entire dynamic. It's a post-World War II world, and I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of the lie. And nonprofits almost all line with progressives and leftist causes, except for, of course, when you get into some of the neocon stuff, because, of course, they share the globalist worldview, whether they're left-wing, like a liberal internationalist and have that kind of worldview, or a democratic peace theory worldview, right? Or they're a neocon, which had the vehicle of the Republican Party for a while, all right? It doesn't really matter. They both still share the globalist mentality. So you will find money for groups that are supported by, like, Lindsey Graham, and many who were supported back when he was still alive by John McCain. And there's others. We can go on and on. John Cornyn, for instance. I mean, these are groups, these are foreign policy blob groups, and their job is to promote the globalist agenda. It doesn't stop there. Reportedly, 97% of USAID employee political donations go to Democrats. Let's break it all down. This is Time magazine, by the way. You may remember after 2020 when they blew the whistle and everything I had said, Barnes had said, and a bunch of others, the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. What they really mean is the blob's efforts, along with, it was a very fascistic move, along with certain figureheads in the private sector, to change how we conduct elections, to take advantage of COVID and other rules and other environmental issues at the moment, at that time, to change how we conduct elections so that they could flood the damn zone with unverifiable ballots that were never counted as legal in the past. And now, by the way, since there were mechanisms in place to ensure they couldn't repeat 2020, look what happened. When there's a modest effort to match them in early voting, but also those efforts are there to ensure that they can't do what they did in 2020. Well, oh, well, shocker. There are 4 investigations by county district attorneys in Pennsylvania watching Democrats try to chase down people who had change of address flags. Why? Why would they do that? Why would they knock on the door of people they know no longer lives there? Because when they fill in fake change of address ballots, they want to make sure that person is no longer there and going to come and try to get their ballot. Obvious. But this is what I meant but when I said that, look, Republicans, many of them are actually supporting their own demise. It doesn't matter if they would be moderates, so-called moderate neocons, whatever. They would still. This system would still not work for them. They will always be the minority. Media funding under the guise of democracy. USAID funds independent journalism through initiatives like the Media Viability Accelerator, the MVA, but who actually benefits? In Peru, USAID funneled between $32K to $200K to outlets like RPP, La Encerrona, Epicentro, Ojo, etc., right? Ojo Publico and La Repubblica, I'm killing these words, which accused of pushing progressive agendas. Western media also receives USAID funds, raising questions about the government influence on journalism. Is this about independent journalism, or is it about ensuring a particular ideology dominates a narrative? I mean, that's obviously a hypothetical. We all know what the hell it is. Rhetorical. NGOs and nonprofits, development or ideological capture. USAID's billions flow to NGOs worldwide, but where does that actually go? It go to gender and social justice programs. Millions allocated to gender equity, social justice, by the way, which is what the groups are listed under that got money to build things in Palestine that never actually got built. The only thing that got built were terror tunnels, like I said. Overwhelmingly aligned with leftist ideology. And by the way, who was standing behind Jamie Raskin? That's right, Muslim extremist Ilhan Omar, who married her brother. Climate and environmental activism, grants for environmental sustainability often fund activist groups pushing progressive climate policies. And no wonder why there's a consensus. It's easy to buy one. You can do it through USAID. See? NGOs and government institutions sell consensus. They will sell you a consensus. They can be bought and paid for. They will package up a nice consensus on COVID. They'll package up a nice consensus on climate change. And by the way, if you go against it and you're a professional, they'll ruin you. Ask the leading scientist who studied the polar bear. When she found that the polar ice caps, their habitat actually was not dissolving anymore, but in fact expanding, she was destroyed. Migration and border policy. Certain church I was talking about. They don't get involved, right? Well, unless you go after the immigration scam backed by USAID and others, where a bunch of cartels get funneled money from immigration lawyers, legal coyotes, who happen to have the protection of the archdiocese because they want to make sure that those people get where they're going, because nobody's going to the church anymore. So they need as many people to kneel in the pew as possible so they could stuff their baskets with more money. But they don't get involved. Kill a bunch of babies, they're dead silent. USAID partners with NGOs supporting open border policies, funding legal aid and advocacy for migrants while ignoring border security concerns. These aren't neutral humanitarian efforts. They are political investments. Damn, man, that's so right. Look at what he captured here. Paul Sperry, before trying to deter Trump from his deportation plans at prayer at the National Cathedral, Reverend Marion Budd never disclosed that she met in El Paso plus Juarez with liberal groups to provide shelter and legal support for illegal aliens. Never disclosed that she's an open border activist. And here you go. There's the government NGO tracker. Who do we have here? Well, that's Bill Kristol. Yes, that's right. Bill Kristol, the neocon, whose daddy, Irving Kristol, was a communist and father of neoconservatism. You have got to be freaking shitting me, folks. Nice check there, Bill. What'd you get that check for? USAID and media collusion, the Politico and AP connections. If USAID funding is truly nonpartisan, why do media outlets overwhelmingly lean left? Politico received $8 million from USAID, which mysteriously stopped right before they suddenly couldn't make payroll. What was USAID? Did I go too far? No, I didn't. What were they paying for? The Associated Press took over $600K from the State Department. And by the way, this is a big problem because, again, the State Department is always a cover for CIA. And the Associated Press and many others, like the Washington Post, have a very long history of filling their pages with spooks who then bullshit and lie to you through what is the guise of credible news, impartial news. It's also worth noting that the honorable leader of the Northern Alliance was executed via camera bomb, even though he was incredibly hard to get, to locate, to interview. You know how they got to him? A so-called journalist at the Associated Press, who actually turned out not to really be a journalist. And wouldn't you know it, his cameraman wasn't really a cameraman. He was carrying a bomb and proceeded to blow them all up. That led to a tremendous problem in Afghanistan. Our one and only ally who was an actual, I don't care if he's a warlord or not. I don't really give a shit what he did to the Taliban. He was an honorable man and our probably one and only true friend. Executed by an Associated Press journalist. This extends beyond USAID. We already found $517K in taxpayer funds that subsidize Politico's Pro subscriptions at a staggering $13,995 per user. So, folks, if you've ever been wondering, hey, how the hell did they make a living off these subscriptions? They don't seem to have very many. Rasmussen reports. You know how much they get? You know how much they operate with off of subscriptions? It's not enough to fund their polling. Right? Any independent media who tries to have a paywall, we had a paywall at People's Funding Daily. Well, it must be nice to be a leftist organization because it looks like I'm a sucker. I could just be a left-winger, guys, and for every $5 subscription you give me, I'll actually turn it into $14K. What the hell am I doing? It pays to be a leftist propagandist. Being honest sucks. This blows, man. I could be rolling in it right now. Why is the government propping up partisan media? Look at this they did here too. J.D. Vance's beard is aggressive and a threat to feminist ideals. But Tim Walz's bulging eyes out of his head was emotional intensity, holding our gaze. What the hell? This is what you're funding. Here's USAID. 97% of political donations go to Democrats. Go to Open Secrets, which busted Bernie Sanders. You're so full of shit, Bernie. You're a big pharma bitch, and you always have been since you decided to run for president. You friggin' fraud. You are an absolute fraud. Everything about you is fake. Look at this crap. It speaks for itself. Any Republican any Republican who interferes with the leader of their party, who is the elected sovereign, deputizing Elon Musk to end this crap, is a traitor. He's a traitor to the majority of Americans who voted for them and his party and his leader of his party. And he's a traitor to his own community. Or she. Because the only one that USAID is benefiting here is the ruling class. They are not benefiting your constituencies. They're not benefiting your communities. They are actually benefiting the people who hate you and hate your community and have harmed your community day in and day out. This is a scratch the surface dig from Jay over at Qantas. Scratch the surface. He didn't even get the spade and really like, no, that was like a little like, let's see what we got at the surface here. Shuffle through some, oh, gold nugget. Oh, here's another gold nugget. Because they're everywhere. They don't even care. They don't even care, man. They're not worried about you. That's the truth. They're flipping a shit now because you actually elected this guy again. And he figured this out. He figured it out. All right, real quick before we get to our clip from the White House. I know we're way over. Let me just rock this real quick. For those of you, we had people come and see us last time. Every election, post-election, I go on my little speaking tour. Typically, it's post-election. I'm actually returning to a place that I did before the election because I went around, and obviously before the election, I went around and told people what I think is going to happen and why I think it's going to happen and what is going on driving it, right? Now, it's good to have the opportunity to return, especially since this state in particular has one of those senators that I'm talking about, all right? And the topic, of course, will be what the hell happened, right? Only I'll do it nicely. And I'll be joined by my good friend, Carrie Lake. So that's going to be cool. So if you want to check it out, you're going to be in the area. There are tickets there. They will obviously welcoming you to the event, but it is the Lincoln Reagan dinner for the Union County Republican Party, which is a very big deal over there. A very big deal. Carrie will be speaking. Obviously, she is going to give a barn burner. I have no doubt. All right. Laura's laughing in the background. These two are looking forward to getting back together. It's always a good time, but I got to give them credit. It's not easy to invite somebody like me to a party function. It is not. I go and I speak to different groups. I speak to donors a lot. I give a lot of speeches to people that give money to politics. I give speeches to financial people, right? And I give them, my takes. It is not easy for a party to say, bring someone in to give us the painful truth. And I got to give them credit for it. I really do. Democrats, you would do well to do the same thing. All right. I am deadly serious because you are in the wilderness. The only thing saving Democrats right now is that a certain element in the Republican Party itself is also corrupt. All right. Hold on one second, and then, we'll just play it. Let me pull up the response by the White House from Caroline Leavitt about this narrative. Well, Elon wasn't elected. Let me go back.
I think Capitol Hill.
Here we go.
I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable, the comments that have been made by these Democrat leaders, and frankly, they don't even know what they're talking about. Because President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to make this government more efficient. He campaigned across this country with Elon Musk, vowing that Elon was going to head up the Department of Government Efficiency, and the two of them, with a great team around them, were going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers. That's all that is happening here, and for Democrat officials to incite violence and encourage Americans to take to the streets is incredibly alarming, and they should be held accountable for that rhetoric.
Woo! Let me just say this. This is what it comes down to. We just had an election. He literally said, I'm going to put Elon Musk in charge of this government agency that I'm going to establish. I'm going to call it Doge, right? Vivek Ramaswamy is going to help. I'm going to deputize smart, independent people who are very good, by the way, at running their own lives efficiently and solvent, right? With solvency. I'm going to deputize these people, and they're going to root out the corruption. They're going to pull out the weeds, and we're going to have a beautiful garden when they pull the weeds out of our garden from the root. The real problem here is that they convinced themselves that Donald Trump wasn't going to win. They did. They convinced themselves. They tried to throw him in jail. They indicted him on 91 felony counts and nothing stopped him. A sham Biden White House directed prosecution in, of course, New York, which is known for its overzealousness, but even the Southern District of New York, which is known for overzealous prosecutors, okay, wouldn't take the case. So they had to find some fat, disgusting district attorney, Alvin Bragg, to do the dirty work for them, send over the number 3 at the Justice Department to do it. And it ended up in a meaningless conviction that's going to be overturned with a kiss-ass lawyer who, by the way, has a daughter who works for the blob. Like, cartel. It's a cartel. Godspeed on your second time, sir. They didn't know. You think he thought ahead of time that he was going to end up in that kind of a position? You could hear it. He was choking as the words were coming out of his mouth. Speed on your second term, sir. They're out of ideas. There's no more Russia collusion hoax. They're making it up as they go along. The donors aren't even picking up the phone for them, although they think they have energy behind this. They do. But it doesn't matter. I mean, let's say they're just convincing themselves of that because they really have no other choice. That's really what it comes down. What other choice do they have? He's going for it. He's really going for it. This isn't Trump 1.0. Let's talk, guys. Let's be friendly. I think you really do want what's best for the American public, don't you? Why don't we all get together at the White House and talk about what we agree on? Now, that Trump is gone. They tried to lock that Trump up. That Trump was going to die in jail. This Trump said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You ain't fooling me twice. And that's where it is. All right. Yeah, let's play the rest of it. It's almost done. We'll play the rest of it, and then we'll take it on outsies.
It sounds like something that they're most concerned about is Doge engineers with access to Treasury systems. Can you clarify, do the Doge engineers have read-only access in these systems, so they are not allowed to write new code?
No.
They are not. Okay.
No.
And then one...
For those of you who don't know what that means, okay, when you are, let's say, interacting with an API and you have a software program or you yourself are in a file share or something, and you're trying to look and examine files and records and whatever, right? And let's say you make an API call to the system so you can gather information, all right? Or maybe there's something already set up that allows you to do that through a user interface. Anyone who's ever worked on cPanel and you have File Manager or something, you know what I'm talking about. All they can do is open up and look at the files. All they can do is look at the paper trail. Read only means just that. So they're not able to write like WRITE. So if they give a get command, they can get information, but they cannot push information back out, meaning alter code. Okay. And why would they be upset? What would be the real reason that they would be concerned that Elon Musk's engineers have write permissions, right? I mean, well, one, you could fabricate some shit, couldn't you? I mean, you could literally alter some of those documents, although there'd be a timestamp for that. But you could change the system. You could change how it works. You could add new code. You could alter how that operating system is working. That that website is designed or whatever. Like this, you could do whatever you want. And what is their number one interest? Preserve the status quo. Preserve if that means everything. Keeping an institution alive and keeping lines of code the way they were written by the blob. You can't alter anything. That's why I'm telling you. None of it's really reformable. It's not reformable. It has to be dismantled. It all has to be dismantled. I'm sorry. It's just true. Although you can't. I said Rip the weeds out from the root. I didn't say trim it back. A dandelion's still a freaking dandelion, all right? It gets ugly as hell after it matures.
One more thing. NBC is reporting that some of the illegal immigrants that we've seen.
Oh, looks like it was cut off. Looks like it was cut off from there. And that's fine, because that's just about it. Let's just see something here. Did I miss anything real quick? Did I miss anything? Let's see. Ooh, yeah, we do have a deal for you. And I might as well have told you that. What is it? Because it's Wednesday already. Yeah, it's Wednesday. So let me tell you all about it. Okay. Extra. Read all about it. I love this stuff, though. I really do. Even my kids, my little one's picky. He's picky at eating stuff. Like, the kid just wants chicken nuggets and Doritos. Like, it's not good. So I made him chicken cacciatore the other day, which he liked, which was awesome. But we're starting to get him to eat more things. But fruits, vegetables, maybe get him to eat a carrot or something here and there. I'm serious. He's just one. My other children were not that picky, so it's difficult for me to deal with it. But what's great is that I can sneak this into his juice, and it works just fine. Energy levels are higher and everything. I personally drink this once a day. I absolutely have to. I love it. For those of you who got it, you know what I'm talking about. And look, they even have showcased their new strawberry lemonade, which I love. My son still likes the lemon lime. He can drink that all he wants. But also too, I personally do like the lemon lime. I do like the wild berry, which my wife did, and most of the girls seem to like. But the strawberry lemonade is freaking banging. I mean, you guys get what you want to get, but I'm telling you, man, the strawberry lemonade to me is where it's at. Look, the Dems spent years forcing mandates and dictating how we manage our health. Now they're pushing back when we try to take control of it ourselves, right? That's why I am going to reclaim my own health with Field of Greens. America's confidence in healthcare is hidden all time, but 24-year low. And there's new administration that is here, and they are trying to change all that. That change is on the horizon, but change takes time. Your health can't wait. And that's, again, why I am daily on Field of Greens. It's whole fruits and vegetables. That's it. And all of us could use more of that in our diet. Who could really get 5 servings of fruits or 5 servings of vegetables themselves every day? It's not realistic, folks. Just one drink and you got your healthy head start on every day. Every fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens is doctor selected for a specific health benefit, which I need as many of as I can. There's a heart health group. There's lungs, kidney, and metabolism, even healthy weight group. Right, so, and Field of Greens promises you that at your next checkup, your doctor will notice your improved health, or they will give you your money back. So if you use the promo code TPP for the People's Pundit, promo code TPP, I got you a 20% discount to get you started. Go to fieldofgreens.com, use the promo code TPP, that's fieldofgreens.com, and use the promo code TPP. And also what Laura got us, which is really cool, is this thing. Maybe I can go run and even get it real quick. I'm serious. Yeah, let me see if I can get this thing. Hey, Laura, got that little mixer thing? Man, it's battery operated. You stick it in the cup, individual cup, press it, and it's got like a little tiny little ball at the end of it that's a mixer. Spins it up real good. And I absolutely love it. You should add it to your diet too. Can I show them that little mixer thing you got for Field of Greens? Yeah, can you get it? She goes, oh, God. I want to show them what it is. I think she got it on like Prime or something. It was super easy, but I'm going to show it to you because it is really cool. And I think it makes a big difference, right? Because you want as much of this dissolved as possible. So it makes a big difference. And you could sit there and whip with a spoon all day, and you are not going to get the result that you get with this, right? I mean, honestly, you cannot whip. It's like $15, you said. You cannot whip with a spoon. Yeah, super high. And on the third one, be careful. It'll splash everywhere if you're not careful. I'm telling you, it works. And just hold it down to end it. There's also different extensions. I think we may need a new one soon. This one's getting a little wobbly. Or it probably just needs to be tightened. You know? Here you go. But it's dope. Which I'm going to go do right now. Take my Field of Greens. All right, folks. Don't forget.
Did you get the message about the information I sent you about the Reagan dinner?
Oh, I did. I already put it up. Yep. If you want to make sure I told you guys about the Reagan dinner. Now I feel like I'm forgetting something. I was going to say something more. Looks like it is what it is. If I forget, I forget. Oh, just to it's not even re-clarify. Just to reiterate, 2 p.m. is the new start time unless I explicitly say something's going on and we'll change it. There are a few reasons. We heard from multiple people, including people who have been following us a long time, who said, look, 2 o'clock is better for me. I can actually watch it live, or at least I'll catch the second half of it. So I would, if you could do it at 2, that would be great. And then when we tested a couple of times, even unannounced. The 2 p.m. shows seem to do better than the noon ones, which means those people were telling the truth, plus others. I guess such our key core demographics, it's easier for them to watch at that time. And then there's other shows that are still going on at 12. So I know that you'll be splitting your time. Well, if we're lucky, sometimes you may just go watch the other show, right? But I think also, too, the only thing that was preventing us from doing that was at the very least, our little one gets home from school in the middle of that. So we just had to make some alternate arrangements. And normally we won't go all of this time anyway. So I'll have enough time to go get him, right? And somebody on Friday, it was Alex or somebody, was like, don't forget your kid, Rich. And that was great. So yeah, it'll be more often. The time will be at 2 because we also had what are the odds at 2? And it's like, we're doing what are the odds on Mondays. It's not always set in stone whether or not we can do it because my schedule and Robert's schedule, especially when he has court, it can be tough. And then we're doing inside the numbers or between the numbers at noon as opposed to 2. It's just too much. So just keep it for all of these reasons, 2 p.m. is better. All right. And it'll be more shows almost every week, more shows, maybe a little less time per show. Although today it was almost a whole 2 hours again. It's just the way sometimes it's going to work. The news cycle. That's what's going to dictate a lot of it. All right. All right. So with that in mind, now you know. All right. Don't forget the links to Field of Greens and everything are in the description below, as well as the public polling project. That is still up there, guys. Support that if you can. Share it far and wide. That would be great. If you like the videos, don't forget to hit the like button. All right. And the best place, as always, we appreciate you guys following us anywhere and everywhere. But the best place is definitely on Locals right there. peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. And I will see you guys tomorrow. That's all, folks. I think I'm going to end the show with this from now on. What do you guys think? Deuces.